Good afternoon, everyone. I'll say it again. Good afternoon, everyone. It is about to get hot. Welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast, where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. I'm your host and moderator, Nathan the Barbarian. Welcome back. Let me bring the crew in, and we will get started. Thank you for being here. Everybody in the audience, really appreciate you. Here we are. Got a new face with us, Tamaya Dennard. How you doing, Tamaya?
Well, how are you?
I'm doing well. And we got Brother Dre back. How you doing, Brother Dre?
What's happening? What's happening, Brother Ivy and everyone? Good to see you.
Hey, last time Brother Dre was here, we made news. So get ready. It was hot. Appreciate it. Phil Hemlich, how you doing, sir? You're muted.
Good, we can't hear him.
On your end, not my end. Yeah, not on my end. I'm definitely looking at it right now, not muted.
You might have to get his son back on here and help him get it fixed.
It'll be okay. Let's move on. Kevin Aldridge, the voice of reason, sir. Always good to see you. How you doing?
Good. Happy Friday to everybody.
Most Def and Tarris, Troy Horton, last but certainly not least.
Can you guys hear me now?
Absolutely. And as
Always
usual,
does that
cutting
shit.
off Tarris.
Hey, it's my role on the show, but first of all, I do not. Tarris, you go ahead, finish, and I'll say something. Go ahead.
Good. I was gonna be like, man, if Phil's mic could just be muted the entire time, we can just see his face and hear him going. That would be a great show.
I noticed that a lot of the audience also makes that same request. So I can see something here. It's kind of a pattern, you know. But I do. I want to welcome Dre back, who I would consider the real voice of reason. No offense, Kevin, but. Each to his own. I also do want to thank my friend Nathan. Nathan's been sending me all kinds of propaganda, information on the school choice issue, a lot of clips. And Nathan, I have to admit, it's affected my thinking. I mean, after all, if it's on the internet, we know it's true.
My work is just getting started. See what I'm dealing with, y'all? But Tarris, back to you, bro. Good to see you. How are you?
Glad to be here, man. I enjoy this so much.
Yeah. And to the audience, thank you so much for being here. So if you're watching, for most of the show, you'll see this screen right here. So your chat will be scrolling. People can read it. People can interact with you, see what's going on inside the comment section. And then from time to time, I will be highlighting it like we did with Rachel. Good to see everybody. Jerome, Rachel, Crutha, good to see you. LG, a.k.a. Black Russia. How you doing, Black Russia? Regina, Vanita, good to see you. Steban, Dina is here. Good to see you. Pamela, good to see Pamela and Brenda. And I like to do that with the people when they first come in. Let's get straight to it. We got two former members of City Council with us, so we'll certainly, hold on, can't forget Roy. What up, Roy? Good to see you, bro. Thank you for being here. Please like and share. Sharing is caring. It's like tipping your waiter. Liking and sharing when you're watching a live stream is just like tipping your waiter.
And I am a big tipper. I just want to say that right now.
I love big tippers. So tip your content creator by hitting us with a like and a share or share. Well, actually, a like and a share is better. I'll be honest with you. So let's get straight to it. I want to talk about a local story. We'll talk about two local stories to get things started. We'll talk about Hyde Park in a second because there's been some movement on that story. But I want to start with something from North College Hill, and I want to start by playing a video of the North College Hill superintendent. Apparently, they've been having some issues with tardiness up there. So he went to Facebook to, I'll let you tell me what you think he's trying to do and whether you think it's a good tactic and a good idea. But check this out.
Hey, this is a shout out to Dr. K on the Cincinnati Public School Board. I appreciate what you had to say yesterday about tardies. This is Dr. Eugene Blaylock Jr., Superintendent, North College Hill City School District. And I, too, or we, are having an extremely hard time getting our students to school. Last week, we averaged about 120 students coming to school tardy. Again, 120 students coming to school tardy at the high school. At the high school, our doors open up at 7:45. Students are not tardy until 8:15. North College Hill is a walking district. So there's really no excuse whatsoever for students or for parents to allow students to come to school tardy. We need students to be in school. We need students to be on time. When they're not in school, that is when they get caught up. So please, parents, we need your support. We need your help. We need students to be in school on time, ready to learn. We will not and cannot blame the teachers, the administration for students coming to school late. Dr. K, thank you. And let's continue to support each other.
Yeah, so let me go first. I got all kinds of problems with this. All kinds of problems with it. Like, I think the man, I don't know Dr. Eugene Blaylock. I don't know him. I don't think I've ever met him. I think his heart is probably in the right place, but I got all kinds of problems with this. You know, it's like, you know, from a parent standpoint, I get the whole tardiness angle, but there were some things that he said, and there's some things in the story that local news picked up on that are just very troubling to me. So, you know, it just felt like performative. It felt like, you know, my question is, beyond venting about tardiness, what are you going to do about it? What is your action plan? At some points, he starts getting defensive about teachers and administrators, like, don't blame us, which to me just takes the conversation in a whole different direction. Now it's less about working together and it's more about placing blame on one another. What he didn't talk about and what's being reported is that apparently he reached out to the local police and shop owners, and he told them, and I guess they worked out some type of agreement where they're going to close the shops to the students who are walking past. I got all kinds of problems with that. Like,
why? What's wrong with that?
well, let me tell you what's wrong with that. Let me finish. Let me tell you what's wrong with that. Off the top is that's not their responsibility. Now you're turning them into, from the student standpoint, you're turning them into sort of like, instead of neighbors, now they're watching you. It's to me, it's the wrong feel to it. I get what he's trying to do. And then maybe I'm thinking, I don't know, but maybe the teachers and administrators are to blame for this. But that's my strong statement about it. What do you think? You agree or
Nathan,
disagree?
let me put this in a little context here, because I looked this up. So he said that there's an average, they averaged 120 students who were tardy at the high school last week. To put that into context, that's 30% of your student body. So anybody out there who's saying like 120 students, that may not be that much. That's 30% of your students at the high school who are not on time for school. That is a huge problem. That's not a small thing. 30% of your students are not in school on time, ready to learn. That's not an insignificant thing. So I think, you know, this is probably a situation where you've got a superintendent who's fed up with regularity. 30% of your students are showing up late for school. That's going to create a disruptive problem and an issue, right? And I differ with you about the shop owners, because my initial reaction was kind of like yours. I was like, well, you know, it's really not the responsibility of these businesses, but if it's a partnership, like if the businesses agree, like if the schools go to the businesses and the businesses say, cool, I'm cool with it, you know, let's work. It's kind of that village mentality. You know, sometimes it takes a village to raise a child. And if the shop owners and the other people in that community are with it, and they're saying, hey, we're fine to be able to do this, to make sure that we can get these kids to school on time, I don't have a problem with it. You know, if you're working in partnership, like I think that's what good communities do. They try to work in partnership to solve issues. So I didn't have as much of a problem with it as you did. And look, if we're just being honest, we know that, yes, there probably was some defensiveness on his part, and rightly so, because teachers and administrators do get blamed for underperforming students. Yes, it is. You can shake your head. It's the conversation that we have with Phil every week about why private education is better than public education. And he'll immediately go to blaming the teachers and the administrators and the union.
Oh, yeah. Phil's the whipping boy. Yeah.
That quite personally are, when you get right down to it, parental issues. Make sure your kids are at school on time where they need to be. And that's really where the buck stops. I also get tired of people trying to blame other officials for the responsibility that's yours. My mom made sure I was where I needed to be when I needed to be. That didn't mean that I didn't try to skip out, but there were repercussions that I paid when I got home, when I got caught, that discouraged me from doing it again. So probably like the superintendent, and rightfully so, he's tired of people laying at their feet things that are responsibility of their parents. And I'm sorry, you're not going to get me to agree that 30% of your students being late is not a problem.
Anybody else? Feel free to jump in.
I'll go next. He's got to set a standard for what these people are in school for and what they should expect going forward as they graduate. Because when you graduate, if you're going to be habitually late to your job, you're going to get fired. So if you have to incentivize the kids to get there early, I want to get early to breakfast at 7:30 in the morning to get us in. I knew that was going to get some biscuits and gravy. I was going to get a good meal. I was going to socialize with my friends. You can incentivize kids to get there to school on time. And I'm sure they're going to work on that. I'm sure they're going to work on that. I agree with what Pam said that, like, I can't remember what she replied, but the kid, like Kevin said, the kids have to show up ready to learn, because if they don't show up ready to learn, they're going to disrupt the other kids. And that's just going to take your whole first period is out the door. If you got to, when somebody comes in, they're late, and somebody else comes in, you got to redirect everybody because they're coming in late. They're coming in late and disruptive too, because that's just, nobody's going to come in late and quiet. They're going to come in late and disruptive because that's just the nature of how we do things. And so I think this is not setting up our kids up for failure by pacifying and making excuses for them in any way. Shut the stores down. Don't let them in the stores. Why should they be in the stores anyway when it's school time? When it's bell time for school, be in the school to learn. And if your parents, and if you have problems getting there, incentivize the kids.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. I made this statement before. Stop placing police in positions to discipline your kids. The bottom line is that I applaud Dr. Blaylock. He's putting the emphasis on the parents to take care of their business. The business owners also want to make sure they handle their business. And then if you have the police that will have 120 kids working their way to school, that's more accidents, that's more thefts, that's more trouble, that's more police calls, and that's more police interaction that most parents do not want anyway, for tardiness or to have truancy. So it is responsible for the parents to take care of business, to make sure that their kids get in school so there's no other mischief or issues that are happening that could cause them more problems as we go.
When I was on city council, I introduced and passed, Manette Cooper, who was with me, then co-sponsored her. It was basically a parental responsibility law. It basically held parents responsible for stuff like this. And, I'm just shocked, Nathan, if I heard you correctly, did you say that maybe it's the fault of the teachers or the school administrators the kids are late? Gee, how's that work? I think that guy was very astute in to some degree putting the responsibility on the parents, and I agree that why not get the shop owners to cooperate? It's in the kids' interests. But what I always one concern that I don't have is kids' rights. Okay, that just isn't high on my agenda. Okay.
Sorry about that. I'm getting some feedback from your mic to mine. That's why I muted it. But can you go ahead? Go right ahead. Feel free.
I'm just I'm curious as to, because I agree with Phil. I don't know if that's a good thing to say early on.
It's a great thing, Tamaya. It's a great thing.
Sure the jury's still out on that. However, I get not wanting the business owners to, police the children, but I'm to people who have these misgivings about what the village should look like. What are you proposing? Because at some point we have, and I'm not a parent, so I'm always very reticent to step into conversation about parenting out of respect. But I'm curious at what point are we asking for parents to be responsible? That's the only thing. I mean, I walked to school. I went to College Hill, not North College, just regular College Hill, a couple blocks down the street, walked to school, never tardy. And I get, like, a single mom, like I have some similar circumstances. I don't understand how we're asking too much for kids to be to school on time, because if asking kids to be to school on time is too much, that's a very sad commentary on what we think the trajectory of our society looks like.
Yeah, for me, it's not about asking, not asking kids to show up to school. And we had these conversations, we talk about low hanging fruit. Blaming parents is the ultimate low hanging fruit. We get that. We know who's responsible. But the tactics and the things that this man said, in my opinion, I wonder if they're going to be productive. To me, they seem like they're counterproductive. And, we've had this conversation before. And Brother Dre, you started this conversation talking about how we shouldn't be asking police officers to do things that exceed the job description, which I still got a problem with. So in this case, we asking shop owners to turn into, like, I don't know, school tardiness enforcers. That's not their role. My thing is, we should be maybe they should be having a conversation about starting school later, and instead of starting school at 7:45, start at 8:30.
Why don't they pay the money to be on
no,
time?
no.
How about that?
Hey,
Why don't we get
as a pastor, let me tell you this: changing the time don't work, because all that
Sure
stuff,
does.
people who are late are going to be late no matter what you change
Sure
the time to.
That's
Lateness
not
is a product of habit, not a product of timing. And that's always the fallacy. Oh, if we just move the time, no, they're going to sleep 15 minutes later or 20 minutes later and leave out the house 20 minutes. People who are habitually late, that's a habit that has nothing to do with the timing.
I think
okay?
you might be
I can tell you
right
that
about that, Kevin. I think you're right. But if you are a school superintendent, I think there's some element of truth in what you're saying. But in this case, we're talking about a school superintendent that's dealing with an issue of tardiness. Has this man done any polling? My thing is, before you get online and start making Facebook posts, you should be calling all these parents and trying to figure out why they're not there. Perhaps if you move the date, the start time back, that might deal with some of your problems. But to go on Facebook talking about how you're not going to blame teachers, maybe you got some teachers that create a bad environment and the kids don't want to be there. We don't know.
The Facebook post
that's
is the
just
beginning.
too bad.
The
That's
Facebook
just too
post is
bad.
just the beginning of the thing right now, and he's getting the community involved. And I believe that the shop owners and the store owners have a responsibility to not allow these kids in there, just like they have a responsibility not to sell alcohol to underage kids and not to sell cigarettes and all those weed products to underage kids. If they see some kids in there, they should not be so greedy to get the $2 for the little Debbie Snap cake. Send them to school. Get there early. Incentivize them.
Here's why I disagree with that slightly, Tarris. I do agree with and this is what I said, like my initial reaction was kind of what Nathan's had. And I'm cool with it if the shop owners say, hey, we agree. We want to be part of the problem and the solution, right? Like we know a lot of kids are hanging out here when they should be in school. So we're going to make the choice to try to be a part of the solution and not serve them. I'm okay if I disagree that it's their responsibility, right? It's not their responsibility. But if they want to help, then I think that's a good thing. Like that's the difference. Like that's where I see the village mentality of them making the choice to say what you just said. Hey, I'm not going to try to get these $2 or $3 extra for the snacks, because for me, it's more important that these kids get in school versus it being some kind of edict or them feeling like they're being forced to do it. So I'm cool with it if it's a voluntary thing that they're saying we want to be part of the solution to help with this. But I disagree that it's their responsibility. You know, they're a business owner. They sell goods and services to people who come in there. So I wouldn't say it's their responsibility, but I think it's great if they volunteer and want to be a part of the solution.
And one more thing before we go on that point, I want to know what demographic are these shop owners? Are they other people who look like the people who go to North College Hill? Or are they foreigner immigrants over here that don't give a damn or over here to make some money? I think that has a factor in it, because I know in the small mom and pop stores, not in my neighborhood, but in the neighborhoods I see, they're all owned by people who are not American citizens born here on this soil. They might have a different outlook on school, but more than than somebody else. If somebody's going in and they got bongo music playing in the background, so to speak, they might not care about our black kids going to school, just like they don't care about the black adults who they cater to in the neighborhood selling alcohol and all that kind of stuff too as well. So that should be a factor, in my opinion, on who or they look like.
I just want to make sure we're not stereotyping business owners either. Like I hear what you're saying, Tarris, and it's nice to meet you. But I don't necessarily agree that if a shop owner is not from here, that they don't care about education. I think we shouldn't say that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Tamaya and everybody else.
It's Tamaya.
Tamaya. Thank you for correcting me. That's how I feel. I'm just going to say how I feel. I think if an Indian person who's not from America, somebody who's not from America does not have the same kind of affection or empathy to our kids as we might have, they might not have the same kind of empathy to stop selling them and stop making that money and keeping them in that store. I mean, that's a logical something to look at.
I want you to absolutely speak how you feel, but being presumptuous about how they feel without doing a polling or asking them is dangerous rhetoric.
Hey, Tarris, now hold it. You don't like Russians, you don't like Indians. Who do you like?
I like Russians and Indians. I just call it like I see it. I like Russians. I like everybody. When I was on the playground, when I grew up on the playground field, we had every demographic. So when I use slang words like that, it's not to disparage anybody. It's to call it like it is.
I just thought when we were talking about the brawl, I detected some anti-Russian sentiment on your part. I just want to.
It's not anti.
Kind of want to check that out.
It's anti-immigrant. It's anti-illegal immigrant.
That's better. That's good.
Illegal immigrant. Yes, it's anti-illegal immigrant. Yes.
Okay. I'll say it again. You can't be illegal in a stolen land. But go ahead, Brother Dre. What's on your mind?
Let me break this down from a police point as well. In my experience, 30 years, the majority of the calls that we went to the businesses in the morning dealing with juveniles, they were either loitering or they were in the process of theft and they were late for school. And this is why the business owners, I don't have a problem with them saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and shut our doors, because the kids are coming in and usually they come in packs. So they can't control the majority of the kids that come in, because they come in 3, 4s, and 5s, and sometimes 10. They got their backpacks and they pass the things along, and then they call the police. And by the time we get there, they've run off when they should be in school. And this is why the whole village does have to work together, and we keep our kids on point that they don't have that unnecessary police contact. So they should be in school anyway. So if they're leaving home on time, but they want to deter and go to the stores, now you're in a position of theft and everything else that comes with violating those laws. So my point is, yes, shut the doors until they are responsible enough to get to school on time. Then you can be rewarded.
I want to remind people, we're talking about human children. We're not talking about pets. We're not talking about cats and dogs. These are human children. And what stores are we talking about? I don't know, but I'm kind of thinking it's probably like some kind of convenience store. So the kids are going there buying snacks. They're probably hungry.
So
you guys are some of you are advocating shutting the doors on hungry children so they can't get some food before they go to school. That is preposterous.
I said one of my first things was incentivizing them, have an incentive program. I knew I went to school. I rode the bus early to get to school, 7:30 in the morning, because I knew I was going to have biscuits and gravy. If you're talking about meals, Nathan, they can incentivize that and have a meal program where people can get there early. It's like Kevin said, this is a habitual habit within our community that we are dancing around, that we don't like to call out at CP time. And if we don't fix this early, we start in 3rd grade, we start fixing it, you're going to have this going on in high school. And this is the truth. And nobody wants to even talk about it. Let's get it to 3rd grade and we start getting these kids to school early, and then holding these parents accountable and saying, okay, what's the issue? You got food deficiency problems. Get your kid to school at 7:30 in the morning. We're going to make sure they got a good meal. Then if they still got problems, then we should start going for the parents. We should start going for the parents and get them the truancy and putting the tardies on the parents, because tardy students are going to make tardy workers.
So
Yeah.
making the life of parents harder is going to make the life of their children better.
Yes,
I don't buy
yes,
that logic.
exactly.
Oh
I don't
yes.
buy that
Exactly
logic.
right.
There's got to be accountability though, Nathan, and that's the thing that always frustrates me about these conversations is there has to be a level of accountability at all areas. If you're going to want to hold teachers and administrators accountable, but yet make excuses for kids and their parents, that just doesn't work. Everybody has to take a responsible role in their part of the equation, or it doesn't work. There's a social contract that we all live by that if you don't follow it, it's a domino effect. If I don't live up to my piece, then that rolls downhill. And as we've said all the time, it starts at home. Now, there have been several people in the chat who've talked about all the things that community and the village has tried to do to help mitigate some of these situations, and it still isn't working. So I think, like, to your initial point where you were saying, well, like, what is the plan? What is the game plan? It sounds like that there has been some analysis. There have been some things that have been taking place in that community where they've been trying to attack it, and none of it seems to be taking. None of it seems to be stopping the issue. And so I think there probably does need to be some further analysis, but I doubt this superintendent was speaking out of school or he doesn't know what's going on. Like if he's talking about an issue with these kids being in these shops, he probably isn't just creating that out of whole cloth. This is probably stuff that he's observed and that he knows about the kids in his district and what the behavior is there. So let's give him a little bit of credit that he's not just getting online and venting. I would like to think that he probably knows the characteristics and the things of what's going on in his district better than we do.
Mhm.
Oh, he does, but two things can be true at the same time. So I think you're absolutely right. He definitely knows his district better than I do, but he was definitely venting. And what I would recommend to him is to get off of Facebook talking about problems and go deal with the problems. The time you're spending making a Facebook post in your car could have been the time you could have been spending talking with those parents and trying to figure out what the real issue is.
Mhm. Come on, brother Nathan.
He has a more candid audience on Facebook than he does going to individual parents. He can reach more people. You reach more people on the platform that you get. If he has an opportunity to go and reach more people and get more people talking about it, I think he did a great job.
And flip this. So if, let's say, his board has a problem with him and they go on Facebook talking about the problems they have with him, he would say, come talk to me.
Oh, come on. How many
Good
students?
point.
There's hundreds of students. You want him to pick up the phone and call every parent in the school? That's not just a board.
Yeah, that's
That's
called old
kids
school.
got a
That's what they
break.
used to. Yeah, that's called old school. You can do a mass email.
Oh, old school.
You can do. Yeah, it's old school. Huh?
Well,
Like,
guess what?
Stop.
it's called
Facebook is, as
professional.
Tarris said, Facebook is like sending an email out to everybody.
It's nothing like
getting
sending
the
an email
message
like.
out.
It's nothing
Oh
like.
my! It's way center. But it's like sending an email out because
It's nothing
people are
like
on
sending an email
Facebook.
out.
People are on Facebook more than they check their email.
They might be.
If
No,
they
they're
are
not.
on. So yes, they are.
No, they're not.
The
When you
majority
send
of
an
people.
email
The
to
majority of
somebody-
people are on Facebook, especially when you're talking about. We're talking about low hanging fruit, Nathan. We're not talking about involved parents who would make sure their
You
kids
don't
are
know
going
the
to
level
school.
of involvement, sir, of these
I-
parents. Can
as
we
a
stop
parent,
shaming parents? I mean,
No,
this
I'm
this
not
is
going to never shame
classist.
parents who are going to make excuses for their kids to be late for school. Never. I will
This
be
is
that parent. No.
This is classism 101. We want to shame parents, right? You don't know
Yeah.
what these parents are
Yeah.
going through.
Yeah.
We
need
don't
to
know what
shame
these parents are
That's
going
right.
through. We don't know what the issues these parents are dealing with. People who deal with children will tell you you cannot just deal with the child. You got to deal with the whole family. You cannot separate them. If we're really serious about this, you got to interact and talk. You got to deal with parents the same way we want to be dealt with. Like I said, if the North College Hill School Board had an issue with him, and they went on Facebook talking about it, the first thing he would say is, why didn't you talk to me? Well, I flip it back to him. Go talk to the parents. Figure out what's going on. Come up with a plan and stop complaining and whining. And
He had
try
a
to
plan.
defend
His
parents.
plan. He did have a plan.
defend
His plan was to get the
defend
shop
teachers and
owners. No, he had a plan. His plan was to get the shop owners to not allow kids in during school hours. That is the plan.
His plan is don't feed hungry kids in the morning. What a great plan. Bravo. Don't feed hungry kids in the morning. Great plan, superintendent. I see what the problem is. I see what the problem is now. And it's at the top.
I believe I believe that he made some calls. They send out information because usually when the kid is not there, they send out text messages to the parents with the technology today. Say your child did not make it to school. And so the parents know that the child should be there at a certain time. So if they are tardy, now you have 130 kids that are now tardy and beyond, just constantly sending messages, because now it shows that the school, imagine this, 30% of those kids are failing, not and dealing with the kids he has in the school. So now you've just supported him as a principal to fail. He doesn't want that on his record. So he's doing everything he could possibly do to reach everybody. And if he has to go to this extreme on Facebook, then so be it. But I bet you he followed a protocol and received back no information, because he said that Dr. K is having the same issue.
He did, and she posted a video as well. Dr. K is Dr. Kareem Moffitt, who I have a lot of respect for. I've had my issues with her, but I have a lot of respect for her. I'm glad that she's on the Cincinnati School Board. But yeah, she posted something similar. It was a little bit different, and it was a little bit different in nature than what he said. Like I said, if you really care about the problem, go talk with the parents, try to figure out. They need to maybe bring some consultants in, let them do a whole culture analysis. They might have to, analysis.
A
and
cultural
science matter,
analysis.
Phil.
These kids are late for school. I mean, what are you going to do? What happens if a kid breaks a window? Oh, don't punish him. Let's do a cultural analysis. We
I
don't
think
know what
that's
he's going
different.
through.
I think that's different, but I understand your point. I think that's different.
Here's what I do kind of agree with Nathan on that point, and I think there's a larger conversation that needs to be had about the culture that is currently in place and that exists with our kids, because the reality is and I'll just go ahead and say it. I mean, it's not necessarily exclusive to one particular race, but I'll speak about the race of which I'm a part of, that there are some significant cultural issues that we have in the Black community with our children that need to be seriously talked about and addressed. And I'm talking about talked about on the real, because there's some things that we want to avoid, that we don't want to talk about, that quite frankly, I feel like sometimes we make excuses for, that don't benefit our kids at all. And we gotta have a real. Well, I think even at the most basic level, when we talk about some of the behavior, disrespect, criminality, some of the criminality that's involved with some of our young people, those are things that absolutely have to be talked about. And again, Brother Dre, I mean, again, these are tough conversations to be talked about, but some of the things, some of the wilding out that we see at Government Square and in some of these other places. I mean, these are things that you got to talk about and that you got to address. And I don't know what the causes are to all of them, but there are things that we need to study and that we need to look into. We need to be truthful about it, and they need to be addressed at all levels.
Yeah. I think what you're going to find is a root cases is concentrated poverty and hunger.
That's what we need to talk
about.
But
we already know that.
Yeah.
We already know that, though.
Yeah, well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what you need to talk about in terms of how to deal with those things from an economic standpoint. But then you also got to talk about how do you deal with the cultural implications of that as you're working to deal with it. Because a lot of our kids are winding up involved in the system. They're winding up not graduating. There's a whole lot of negativity and things that are affecting young Black kids that we got to figure out a way to fix that.
But you know what? There's even more Black kids and we do this all the time. There is more. The majority of our children are doing well. They're not incarcerated. They're not coming in contact. I don't want to leave the conversation on just that note. The majority of Black children are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Sure, Nathan, but that goes without saying. I mean, look, we're talking about what we're talking about here are not those kids, because those kids are the ones who are in school on time doing what they're supposed to be. So like saying that to me in the context of a conversation about what do we do with the kids who are the problem is like, that's something we say as Black people because we worry about white folks saying all Black people are this in such a way. So I understand why that needs to be said, but it's not relevant to what we're talking about here.
It's extremely relevant.
How do we save and impact the kids who are tardy, who are having the interactions with the police, who are living in concentrated poverty, right, and who are struggling to make it. So that's the conversation that we need to be having and that we need to address. Like I think absolutely what you say is true. We got a lot of Black kids who are achieving and overachieving. That's true, but that's not who we're talking about here.
We need go right ahead, Tamaya.
I don't think we have a lot of Black kids who are achieving. The majority of Black kids are doing well. And I think when you get into the conversation around interaction with police, then you got to get into the conversation of over policing of Black communities. And then you got to get into, how Black people and white children and Black children are treated differently in the eyes of the law. So I hear what you're saying. And that doesn't negate the fact that you have, a room of 100 kids, there are going to be 2 who are acting up. And we can't, we'll talk about that 2 till the cows come home and not talk about the 98 who's doing well. So multiple things can be true. And Nathan, to your point, I think you're not going to deal with people. We always say you cannot deal with a concentrated poverty until you are willing to agree with to deal with concentrated wealth. And that's really at the crux of the issue. It's like we are not willing to really address why these things are the way they are. So we band-aid and we make cute stories about the bus, but the real issue is wage disparity, is poverty. There's a lot of things happening. I'm not making an excuse. And so, but things happen, but it's how we respond to those things and how we create the narrative. And so the narrative around like parenting, yes, there are, parents who are not doing the right thing, and we can't not say they're not, but I agree with Dr. Blaylock to a certain degree in the sentiment. I just feel like the way he, laid it at the feet of solely on parents wasn't the way. And so, and I'm not going to ding him for not being, I'm not saying he's not articulate, but I think he could have said it better, but understanding, from a policy perspective, how to word things, he could have worded it a bit differently, but he's not entirely wrong. So I think we just have to be careful about jumping in these boats of absolute morality where it's like all this way or all that way. There's a very nuanced conversation. There's a lot of things that's happening as to why kids aren't doing well. And for some kids, it is an issue of poverty. For some kids, it is parental neglect. We just can't, paint a broad stroke with the brush because we're unwilling to really dig into to really understand what's going on.
I got 3 things for Dr. Blaylock. Never met him before, but I suspect he might see this video, and I hope he does. 1, stay off of Facebook. Don't make another post unless you run it past somebody's media professional so they can make sure that you're articulating and hitting the points that you really need to make. Because you're a professional, you're the superintendent. So number 2, stop shaming parents and look at parents as true partners and working with them. That means in partnership, you might be disappointed. You may not get everything you want, but they're still your partner. And then number 3, you might want to seriously think about pushing back the start time for a high school. 7:45, 8, that's too early. It is too early.
You softening up our kids.
What are these kids gonna do when they got a job that starts at 7:45? They're gonna go in and boss. I think you ought to open the store an hour later so that I can make it. This is ridiculous. This is insane conversation, and I think it's the wrong message to be sending our kids about standards and accountability. This is the type. Look, I consider myself a liberal, but this is the type of liberalism that's just insanity that goes too far. That where middle of the road people get off the bus of liberals because this is the insanity that says I have to mold society around your unwillingness to follow the rules. And that is insane to me.
My son,
Nathan, I want to say you've really helped me understand.
Kevin, that was good.
You've helped me understand what woke means. I didn't really understand it until now.
Phil, that's woke. What he just said, stay off of Facebook. That's woke. No,
that's
Dr.
woke.
Blaylock, keep posting. Post every day if you have to. If you got this kind of visceral reaction, post every day and get better at articulating your message. I hated Andy Bashir's. This is Andy Bashir during COVID, but I've got now Andy Bashir's got his own podcast launching on because he stayed consistent. Dr. Blaylock, as Nathan said, don't do it. Do it. I'll help you if you need some help. Contact me. I'll help you with your content.
Right.
He can. I hope. Again, Dr. Blaylock, don't listen to them. Listen to me. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. But Kamika is exactly right. If you look at any of the data, the studies have been shown is that later start times are better for kids. I used to work in the school building for
Why don't
5
we
years.
start it at noon? How about that? Let them have a good night's
I
sleep.
used to
You know,
work
they
in the
can
school
party and
building.
still get
I was
school done.
I was a before school and after school program director for the YMCA in the Cincinnati Public School. I will say a lot of things about them. And the top of the list is they made sure that we were highly trained about what was going on. And I'm just telling, they should look into that. They can do what they want to do. I know the school that my son goes to, he don't have to be in school until like 9:15. It's one of the most successful elementary schools in the city. So there's something to that, but people can believe what they want to believe. But let's move on. I want to talk about Hyde Park because there's been some movement in the Hyde Park Square development case, and it looks as if the Hyde Park residents who oppose the development has won. Looks like the city's backed away from it. They decided to not go forward with the zoning. And my question is, what does this say about what does this tell us about the power dynamics in Cincinnati and/or in Cincinnati neighborhoods?
Well, I think it says a lot because they didn't repeal because they had a change of heart. They repealed out of political expediency. So that's the problem. The Hyde Park mobilized themselves, and I think there's a lesson to be learned from other folks in other communities around how they organize against council. Council was wrong. They told the community what they wanted. City council looked them in the face and said, "No, we know better than you," and they voted. I think it was they had two votes in opposition. I think it was Jan Michelle and Scotty. And so I don't trust, and I hope the Hyde Park voters don't trust the people on council repealing this have their best interest at heart. They just don't want to be voted off of council.
And I'm gonna piggyback on Tamaya what she's saying, because we've been talking about this situation on the Hyde Park situation for about since it came up, because we felt that it would be relevant in the election. I felt it would be relevant in the election between Corey Bowman and Aftab Peerball. And Corey Bowman could have took this opportunity to seize those 18,000 signatures to add to his voter base. But the way that the city council handled this, in my opinion, as a city member on city council, the Hyde Park community did it the right way. Communities, I don't care what community you live in, this stuff, that's how you do it. You get your constituency together, you get enough paperwork, and you take it in front of whoever. 18,000 signatures is a huge voter block. 18,000 signatures can change an election. And you've seen how fast the city council said, we know we're up for re-election, because I think that this wouldn't have been at this opportune time in history. They might have bucked against it, but they know the election's coming up, and who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what's going to be said behind closed door? They might have said, "Hey, we're gonna shelf this right now, but as soon as we get re-elected, we're going to revisit this again." And hopefully, Hyde Park will understand that the politics of it and even come back even more organized.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a perfect example of democracy at work, and it shows the power that voters and citizens have when they choose to take it in their own hands. You know, we talked about this a little bit on the podcast before, that people forget, that voters sometimes forget the tremendous power that they wield when they actually show up. Now, let's not forget that Hyde Park is one of the more affluent communities in Cincinnati, and so they might have a little bit more wherewithal than financially than some other communities in terms of being able to hire legal counsel and do some of the other things that the folks in Hyde Park did to make this situation happen the way that it did. But I applaud them for making city council and making the developers stand up and say, "Hey, you guys are going to have to listen to us," because if they had just sat back, they would have gotten railroaded, and this project would have been up and running probably by now, because there was little resistance that city council was going to put up to it. By no means should anybody be looking at council right now as heroes or change of heart people. As Tamaya said, I think this is political expediency from an election standpoint for them. I think for the developers, this is a money issue for them, because they knew, had this actually made it to the ballot, in all likelihood, they were going to get beaten, that the referendum was going to pass, that voters were more than likely going to pass it. So this is not a come to Jesus moment for them in terms of, oh, we've been enlightened and now we want to work with the residents, because if they had that mentality, they would have done that from jump. But they were consistent to try to push through this development, as often happens in the city of Cincinnati with developments where they'll run over the voters. It just so happened that these voters wasn't having it. And so they did flex, they got their win, and we'll see how things shake out moving forward.
I used to see this a lot, to your point, Kevin. I would go to community council meetings, and the community would literally say no. Like, we don't want this. We literally don't want this. They would overwhelmingly say they don't want it. And then next thing I know is sitting before us when I'm on the dais, and I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? The community council would vote and say we don't want it. So I just feel like, I just hope that, not that I'm trying to be this is about democracy. It's not, anybody trying to, throw any council members under the bus, but I really want communities to understand we have to stop allowing people to campaign doing the bare minimum in our community. We have to expect more from them, and I hope that people take cues. In my individual capacity, I'm helping to organize voters in the same way in communities so that they can get responses from city council candidates, besides visitation of Black churches. So that's what I'm working on right now, because I hope that people look at Hyde Park and don't get caught up in the zip code and the income. I know there's some differences and there's some privilege there, but they did what they were supposed to do, and council responded, and there's something to that.
Hey, let me say something as somebody who worked in District 2, who worked in Hyde Park, who see the demographics and how they move. They are a unified front. They have multiple meetings within the community. They do things within the community that draw a lot of people, and they actually use their money to support their Hyde Park Council to be able for things like this. So if we always say we don't need to reinvent the wheel, people in the Black community need to study how did Hyde Park do it. They didn't argue with each other. They came together as one, and they used everybody, including say Crossroads Church, a lot of money that comes through there. They organized properly to make sure these things didn't happen. And that's where they gain momentum, waiting for this opportunity, and they push back in such a way that we as a culture don't stay unified. They break us completely up. Hyde Park sat back and said, this is how we're going to do it. And I've witnessed it with all the events that they consistently have for their community and the churches that are involved to be ready for such a time as this.
Phil, your thoughts? What do you think?
I don't really have much to say other than I agree with Dre and Tamaya that I guarantee if there was any community in this city that got 18,000 signatures and had these big meetings, believe me, it would have impacted city council just like Hyde Park did.
Now, I won't undermine Drake because he made a good point, but I also want to make sure we understand how the city charter works relative to like community councils and development. The way that it's structured, it begs a lot of privilege. So in order to even have a CDC available in your community, you have to have certain things present, certain infrastructures in place. So not to make any sort of excuse, but the reason why some communities are more powerful than others is because of the income, because of, who's there, the ability to be able to volunteer is there more for affluent communities than it is for communities that are struggling a bit more. So I just want to make sure, as we are lifting up, as we should, the model that Hyde Park has put before us, I want to be careful I would be remiss not to talk about how the city charter is structured in a way that communities of affluence are able to put together like an infrastructure and have more agency than some communities who don't.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly where I was going with it. I was going just there. Like, I think that it's worthy of studying the structure and how they did it. But I mean, Hyde Park is not like every other neighborhood. You got a lot of, from where I sit, I don't live in Hyde Park, but you got a lot of highly motivated people with income, people with influence, people with connections, people with know-how, and you can't recreate that. People ask all the time, well, why is Walnut Hills different? That's one of the reasons why it's different. You got people out there that's got the time to volunteer, they got the money to contribute, they've got the connections to make things happen. And you can have all the organization in the world, but if you don't have those things in place, you're just not going to go as far as certain neighborhoods that do.
Can I
And
push
that's
back on
the
that a little bit?
scary
I want
thing.
to push back on that just a little bit, because when we are charged, when Black folks are charged, we get behind situations. Where we are charged, we'll go rally, we'll go march, we'll go do those things. But with the correct thing, and I've always said that when people are like, "Are you going to the rally? Are you going to the march?" And I'm always like, "That's not my space. That's space for you." I believe that we should organize instead of like going in there and doing a march down, march on Washington. We shall overcome. I think we should go get signatures and create voter blocks to create change. Because while we shall overcoming back in 1968, these people who are in power are just laughing at us. They're like, they're never going to get it. They're never going to get it. So I believe that we should do the organization, because I don't believe that I'm not making excuses for us as a people, because when we want to do something, we do it. So we should take their motto and say, that's how they move the needle, 18,000 signatures, instead of us going, like if we do the marches, make sure while we're marching, we're taking these signatures and we got registered voters, because you can have 18,000 people out there, unregistered voters, and the needle movers, the Democratic Party chairs and the Republican Party executive committees don't care about that. The only way you can move the needles is if you have registered voters in voter packs like that.
The way you got to impact politicians is two ways: money and votes, right? It's basically that simple. If I can show up voters that can say to you, right, we'll vote you out if you don't do what we need to say. And that's where Hyde Park comes in. They have one of the higher voter turnout. They're one of the higher voter turnout communities in the city. And I think, Black people have shown when we register and when we vote, we change history, we change things. But where we're not registered and where we don't vote, nobody's listening to us. Nobody's concerned about us, because they know, so what? What are you going to do? You're not going to show up and vote. So I think you're right, Tarris. It does start there. It does start in making sure that folks are registered, that they actually show up to vote, so that there's the threat there. If there's no threat or reason that a politician should need to listen to you, they're not going to show up in your neighborhood. They're not going to be concerned about what you have to say. And I was going to say, the scariest part of all of this is you had all of those things in play at Hyde Park, and city council still didn't listen to them, right? It took this to get them to finally get their attention. Like, they didn't respect the fact that they already had one of the higher voter turnout. They didn't respect the fact that there was connections and affluence there. They treated Hyde Park just like they do the West End or any other community where development has run roughshod over people. It just so happened, to Tamaya's point, this is a community that is more organized, is more affluent, and their voters do show up. They got 18,000 signatures, and that caught people's attention. And so I think those are the things that you got to look at in some of these other neighborhoods. If you want to catch city council's attention, you got to have the power to vote. You got to have some threat behind you. Otherwise, the train of progress is going to run you over.
I want to address that. Somebody said something about I don't know what type of Black people you're dealing with. Stop the effing stereotype. That's just the way I talk. I'm a matter of fact type of person. I'm gonna say Black person, white person. I'm not stereotyping, but in me saying that, find the lie. Find the lie. When I say Black people don't organize and get signatures and take it to voter blocks, and we feel, when politicians, you go to politicians and all you're doing is we shall overcome marching. Find the lie in what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Like, I understand what you're saying in the comment, but like, find the lie. And I'll drop there.
No, one of the reasons
I hear what you're saying.
And one of the reasons I chose not to run for re-election is so that I can help organize, use what I learned at City Hall to help organize community. So I'm spending this fall doing just that, not just me, along with a couple other folks, but that's what we're doing. Because you're right, we do the call to action, and then sometimes we don't have anything behind it. So I'm not agreeing with you totally, but I do. There's elements of truth to what you're saying. So we have to organize ourselves, and that's why we're starting with precincts, and not just going wide with voter registration, but going deep with educating voters around why these things, what these things mean. Why are you vote for these things? City council is the way it looks. How can we change it to be what you want it to be? And what is that? What are the implications for your community? So it starts with education, civic education, and that's something that we're working on.
I'm going to address one more thing she said. I said Indian shop owners don't value education. I said Indian shop owners probably don't value black kids' educations like they would their own, just like they don't value black people's lives. That's why they sell them cigarettes and smoke liquor. That's what I said.
You know something? We're going to end up being sued by the India consulate because of your comments. You know that? This show is going to have some kind of discrimination suit filed, and I'm pointing the finger at you, pal. Okay,
well,
that's what I'm doing.
Now it's time for the disclaimer. The thoughts and opinions of Tarris Horton only
put that in big letters.
I am able to, in the freedom of speech,
we're going to have the Russian embassy. We're going to have the Indian embassy after us because of your comments.
And then when we sit down, no, whatever. All right.
We just gotta remember that freedom of speech is not free from consequences.
And I'm sitting up here, I'm up here, and I've been talking the same way my entire life to no matter who it is when I'm in the room with them, and I have not had anybody repercut me because I'm telling the truth. If it was built off lies, then if I sit there and say, "Hey man, I know you Indian dude. I know you don't care about our black kids like that. Or if you did, you wouldn't let these kids. You'd be sending them out of here." If I had that serious conversation with the shop owner.
No, the president of the United States, you be elected president of the United States if you keep talking like that.
What?
No, he won't. The reality is if you pay a skin tax, you can't talk like that and get elected. That is true.
Interesting. Let's move on. Let's talk about what's happening in Florida. I mean, we live in amazing times. The Surgeon General in Florida did a press conference this week, and he said that the state is going to try to eliminate all vaccine mandates for their schools. In the press conference, he even equated vaccine mandates in schools to slavery. Said it's tantamount to slavery, essentially is what he said. Matter of fact, I've got a clip of him right here. Let me play this for you. It's a very quick clip. You can hear,
This is exactly
the Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates in Florida law. All of them. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Okay? Who am I as a government, or anyone else, or who am I as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body? Well, here's what we can do in the Florida Department of Health. We actually have the ability to start that process with what government folks call rules. So the Florida Department of Health, we have some.
You get the gist of it. And this is what happens.
I knew it was going to be Jigaboo Johnson doing that. I knew who it was going to be. I knew.
This is what happens when, unfortunately, you allow certain types of Republicans to have full control of your state for years and years and years. They do stuff like this. But let's see that. I want to know how people feel about that. Do you agree with him? Does he have any credibility? Is it wrong for the government to tell parents that their children should have certain vaccines before they go to school? And of course, I don't believe that. But for the sake of the conversation, I throw it out to the crew. What do you think?
I think it's more of just the idiocy, the rejection of science and medical science and everything we know that we've been utilizing in this country for, decades, that, these vaccinations are completely safe. They present the spread of diseases and in many cases eradicated diseases that we now see cropping up because, suddenly we've come into this era of anti-vaccination and whatnot. Now, here's what I do agree with, okay? I do agree with everybody has the right to make a decision about what they want to put in their body. I absolutely agree with that. But I also agree that if you make that choice, that there are consequences for that. So if you're not allowed to enroll in a public school because you don't want to follow the vaccination rules of that school or your employer, that is your case. So you have the right, just as you have the right not to to put that vaccine in your body, they have the right to deny you access because you don't want to follow their rules. That's fine. That's the cost benefit. So if you have a problem with vaccines and you don't want to do it, fine, but don't demand that everybody else who wants to follow the rules ought to make exceptions for you, whether that's on your job, whether that's at a school, or whatever it is. That's your choice. I agree. If you don't want to put that in your body, don't put it in there, but find somewhere else to send your kid to school. Find yourself, maybe they need, Phil, maybe you need to start private charter schools for anti-vaxxers.
Hey, bro,
Well,
I was going to go there.
Actually, I'll turn that around and say, I'm assuming this mandate or this rule applies to only public schools.
Exactly. Talk to him, Phil. Talk to him.
So in other words, this whole thing that you guys have been throwing out about, oh, they should accept everybody. Well, guess what? Private schools, Florida will likely require a kid to be vaccinated. And yes, they won't accept everybody. They won't accept somebody who is at risk of infecting the entire student body.
See, that works. Another Republican policy, self-fulfilling prophecy.
I know. Let me just address the policy, though. Let me tell you what this is about.
I just told you what it's about. Go ahead.
This is Ron DeSantis' campaign for the 2028 Republican nomination. Okay, he is pandering. He is pandering to the most ignorant parts of his base, because he knows they don't like vaccines because of all these stupid conspiracy theories. That's what this is about. It's horrible, but I still make the point, as Tarris was saying, that is an example where a private school, somebody who has a voucher, might very well choose a private school because they're not subject to these stupid rules and mandates that Florida is about to put in place.
And that is the second thing that it's about. You're right about Ron DeSantis, but the second thing is, let's make the Florida public school system a place that is just so miserable that the only place you can go is to their donor buddies in the charter and private schools.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak for myself.
So you're saying this is a plot to drive? You're saying this is a plot to drive kids in Florida by DeSantis to private schools?
You just spoke to it.
He's doing it to play to his base. That's all he's doing.
Phil, you just spoke to it. You just unveiled the plot. See, this is why charter schools are better.
Phil's wrong.
So let's stick to vouchers. Go ahead, Tarris.
Most private schools do not care. From my involvement in parochial schools, I'll talk about parochial schools. They have not ever once asked me to provide vaccination information. Not once. And during like when COVID was going on and my son was starting in, that was a plus because they didn't require any kind of vaccination for him to go to school. And I liked it did that. So
my kids went to a Christian school around here, and I'll guarantee you, if they didn't get a note from their doctor saying they had vaccinations for tetanus and all the other stuff, they weren't going into school.
Okay, let's talk about COVID. During COVID, did your kids that go to Christian school, did they have to be vaccinated or did they not? That's what I was thinking of, another pandemic.
My recollection is they did, though frankly I don't remember, but I recall they did.
I can recall very, very, very that my son didn't. My son did not have to have any kind of vaccinations to go to school whenever he was going back to school, and it did that.
Is it because he already had them? I'm sure you had to turn in some kind of medical records. Maybe he already had
I'm talking about specifically COVID. I'm talking about, and I think that in Florida, from my perspective and my analyzation of what they're talking about, going forward, they're not going to require these mandated vaccinations that can be popped up by the CDC and then control the public school system in that way. That was just another hurdle that the public school
system. So you support what DeSantis is doing? Is that correct?
I don't support I don't have any kind of opinion on it.
You're starting to sound like Robert F. Kennedy. Do you support it or not?
I support Robert F. Kennedy.
No, that's even worse. But what I'm saying is, are you in agreement with what Florida is doing? Yes or no?
I'm in agreement that each individual citizen of the United States of America should be allowed to make whatever decision they want to make for themselves and their children.
So you're opposed to the school requiring kids to be vaccinated? Is that right?
For any kind of vaccine that is new, that is like CDC, like the measles and mumps and all that kind of stuff that has been going on. But I'm saying for
no, in Florida, Tarris DeSantis, did you listen to the guy? No required vaccinations, no measles, no mumps, no cholera or whatever, no nothing. Do you support that?
I don't support that. COVID, I would support if there was another pandemic that came out and they required a new vaccine that they just rushed out that wasn't clinically trialed over the course of years. Because, okay, Phil, I was trying to explain this to some people back when the COVID vaccine first came out. Do you understand the Tuskegee experiment, what black people had to go through, and they're just sticking vaccines in us? I'm glad that my son is like, I don't want no vaccines in my body. I'm happy that they don't.
Okay, so you're saying you don't want your son vaccinated for mumps or measles or anything? Is that it?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying for any kind of experimental. I'm saying any kind of experimental vaccination that hasn't been tested and tried through history. I'm talking 20 years history. Nothing rushed should be mandated.
We lost 1 million people to COVID. By the way, if you guys haven't seen the Robert F. Kennedy testimony yesterday, I think you're
going right there.
Let me tell you something.
I think you did a great job.
Let me tell you something right here. It's like, I remember when Senator Warner is asking him, do you agree that 1 million people died in COVID? He goes, I don't know. And then he goes, well, do you agree that the vaccination saved millions of people? Oh, I don't know. And then Warner goes, you're the Secretary of Health and Human Services and you don't know how many people died from COVID?
Because he was saying because the numbers have been so misconstrued by the CDC from the beginning.
Come on.
From the beginning. Why do you think Fauci got departed? Come on. This is where we're
Adam Schiff, everybody on the January 6th committee got a pardon
we're going to agree
because
to
they were
disagree
afraid that Trump was going to go after him. You think Fauci committed some kind of crime? Biden, I don't agree with that. He gave everybody pardons who he thought Trump was going to go after.
Were the masks, were they necessary?
Well, all the masks ICE agents were wearing right now.
After you're going back after all the research, and we're going back after we'd had 4 years to do the research, and we go back and we look, and we come to the facts that the masks were not mandatory. The social distancing was not. They needed herd immunity to get this thing go through our community, and they weaponized.
You mean through a vaccine? That's how you get herd immunity.
Right.
They weaponized the mask, the social distancing, and all the things
that the CDC... They didn't weaponize masks.
All the things that the CDC did to skew the numbers. So Robert F. Kennedy...
Tarris, I think you need to watch Newsmax too much.
Here's the problem that I have with all of these COVID truthers and just the insanity of the people who are behind this is we all know that science and medical science is all about testing things over time. And the problem that people have with COVID and with the politics of that is when something is new and scientists are trying to learn and understand something, they're going to tell you what they know at the time or what they believe at the time is effective. And as they come into new information, some of those things might change. And then with the way that social media and political bad actors are today, they twist these messages for all sorts of reasons. They never said that masks or social distancing was a cure for COVID. It was never presented that way. What it was always presented is that it was to reduce the spread of the disease. That social distancing and masks didn't guarantee that you wouldn't get COVID, but it decreased the likelihood that you might get COVID. There's as Tamaya and some others have said, nuance is important when you pay attention to what is actually being said and what's being pushed out there. Because if you remember in the beginning, they were like, well, I don't think masks will work. You know, there were a lot of doctors that were out there that was like, well, we don't think masks will work. Well, then they came back and they were like, well, you know, maybe it will work. And don't
influence of Dr. Fauci.
Actually, Kevin is making a good point, which is all this criticism of how COVID was handled. I think what he's saying is that there are a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks. The problem is these guys, these scientists, they were acting on this. They could only act on the information they had. And all they know is that there were thousands and thousands of people dying. And I will bet every one of us here knows at least one person that died from COVID. I can name a couple.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know a
Okay,
few.
I know more than one
and
person.
to hold these medical people or Fauci, whatever, to a scale or of looking back 2 or 3 years later, that's not fair. They had to act with the best information they had. So let's cut out all.
Oh, that's some bull
this
crap. You're trying to act
BS.
like those masks were not a dog whistle for the Democratic Party and the liberals in the
They were
Democratic
not.
Party.
They
That's
were
some
not.
bull crap.
Terrence.
If that was the
They
case,
were not.
if that was the
Just like
case,
with
why did they
everything,
do all the rioting and why did they do all the marching and
just like
all
with
the people
everything
gathered together?
today, just like with
Terrence.
everything today, bad actors politicize everything. Whether you're talking about the changing of the Cracker Barrel logo or whatever, everything becomes grounds for political bad actors to try to make a big deal out of it. And that is what masks were. And you drank the Kool-Aid. There was nothing political about masks. That was medical advice. There's never anything political about health experts trying to give you advice to save lives. It was the politicians and the bad actors who wanted to try to come in. They killed Amy Acton on those projections that she had initially. But what they always fail to say is Amy Acton's initial projections about what COVID was going to do was based on if we did nothing. She said, if we did nothing, this is how many people would be infected. This is how many people would die if we don't do anything. Guess what? We did a bunch of stuff. So the projections never came into reality. A common thinking person who reasons understands that. But a political bad actor will say, oh, she should be fired for making those projections that never came to fruition. You got to be in. Well, I'm not going to insult anybody.
Yeah,
but
let Drake
you
get in.
have to be, you have to seriously not be trying to think to not understand that. I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, we haven't heard from Dre. Go ahead, brother Dre. What you think?
Let me say, any needle you want to push, you present fear. You exercise the fear. You can make people do anything you want to do, force them to do it based on the fear, not based on the education. And it's interesting because from research, they say the flu has killed more people than COVID. And so when people don't really look at those numbers of the flu happening every single year, how many people are dying from the flu on top of pneumonia and medications that are killing hundreds of thousands and millions per year? And those aren't the numbers that they give you in the process. I mean, the COVID was just a hook to get you to take something, to get the people to understand fear and to see what happens in the future when they come back with something else, because something else is going to come, because it always does. And they wanted to test the temperature on exactly how we can maneuver this medicine.
Okay, so you were against. I want to clarify. So it sounds like, are you against the vaccines? Are you pro? Do you think vaccines are useful medical tools or not?
Yes, they are useful tools and they are necessary. I tell everybody, if it's your choice to educate yourself to the fullest, don't just take it out of fear, take it out of educating yourself. What is your own body dynamics? Because I can take something and say, Tarris can take the same thing and completely go through a shutdown. So you need to know even your blood type. How does your body respond? Because everybody's makeup is completely different. And if you don't study that process of it and knowing how your body will react, then you will just take anything that they say out of fear.
I watched a mashup recently, and it kind of took me back to when Obama wore a tan suit in the White House press briefing. And conservative media, they were showing all these different clips. They went crazy with it. And the point is that everything was highly politicized. It wouldn't have mattered what Joe Biden did, right, wrong, or whatever. If he said, I want people to drink more clean water, his political opponents, the right, the conservatives, would have tried to turn in somehow. They're trying to take away your freedom. If I want to drink dirty water, I should be allowed to drink dirty water. I mean, at some point, you just got to realize it's easier to trick a man than convince that man that they've been tricked. And there's a lot of people who have been tricked and everything's a conspiracy and we can't trust experts. I thought there were a lot of moments. People should be alarmed, capital all the way through at what's happening with the CDC.
Oh my
and
God.
it's being reported. Like, where is this at? 1,000 doctors, former members of the CDC came out and said that RFK is a threat to health. What we saw yesterday should alarm every woman and child. Take the politics out of it. And I thought there was one moment in particular where a Republican senator, he set RFK up and he fell for it hook, line, and sinker. I want to play this for you real quick. This is alarming what we are seeing. We got to stop the games and who you like. And if you're a Democrat or Republican, our public health should be above all partisan politics. But unfortunately, primarily I see the energy coming from one side. They will lie to people until people are actually being shoveled and being put into the grave. But I want to play this for you because I thought it was a master class by Bill Cassidy when he asked him about if Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for Operation Warp Speed. And Trump and his administration do deserve credit for Operation Warp Speed. But I thought it was masterful the way he set him up. And again, this is a Republican senator. Check this out.
That the president deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. That was phenomenal.
Let me ask you, but you just told Senator Bennett that the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID.
Wait,
that was a statement.
I did not say that.
I would say effectively we're denying people vaccine.
So you can't have it both. So Republicans, you can't have it both ways. You can't come out and say that Donald Trump deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for Operation Warp Speed. And what that is, they just fast tracked the process to get the vaccine out. And it worked. It saved lives. And then turn around and criticize the vaccine. You can't do both.
But that's their
Phil does
playbook,
on this
Nate.
thing. Phil does the same thing on this podcast with me.
We're not talking about Phil.
Let's
We're
go
talking
back.
about
I'm saying,
gosh.
you ask the question, then you cut him off, and before he's about to give his answer, you cut him off, and before he gets a chance to answer his question, and then he goes into answer something else, and then you start speculating. Phil's done that to me on this programming today.
Let's get
So
the
what you're
violins
saying,
out. All right,
so
let's
what
get
you're
the
saying,
violins
Tarris.
out for Tarris. Come on.
No,
These
I'm
feelings
saying
are hurt
what John.
now.
I'm saying
Come
what
on.
Robert F. Kennedy
Right.
did right there.
Let me
He
say
didn't even get a
something,
chance
though.
to
I got to
answer.
tell you that. I'll tell you the greatest comment ever, greatest quote throughout the entire COVID process was President Trump in his first term. He said, if they would stop testing, there wouldn't be as many deaths. Case closed. I mean, how can you argue with that?
I do remember that. But the Republicans always want to have it both ways. It's like I want to tell you, woman, what to do with your body, but don't tell me to put nothing in my body. I don't have to. Like, or it's like Michelle Obama, like, who's gonna make me? I can't stand her. She's trying to make me eat vegetables. She's trying to make me eat healthy. And then Kennedy comes along and like his answer to vaccinations are eating healthy. And it's like, he's great. He's brilliant. Like, I have to understand, like, we have to understand that we cannot keep having it both ways. And what is never lost on me is how many people became experts during COVID on science and bodily function when they got like C's and D's in high school science. Like, it is insane how we have all these experts. And the numbers are definitely fudged for the reason that you said, but though that didn't get as much attention, Kevin. I appreciate you bring up the point about Dr. Acton, because that was something that people they go hard on, but they don't look at. Like, there's a responsibility to data that you have to have. You just can't look at numbers. Just like you have to look at them and look at the conditions, look at if there's a sample, if they're like the sets, like there's a very important. I didn't go to school for science. I was a business major. You have to go, but I've taken science classes. And in order to look at data, there's a way you read data. What people do, and it's very lazy, and it's sometimes maybe ignorant. They look at the top line and then they don't take a look at the other information. So, and then that way you can make data be whatever you want it to be. But the most alarming thing about this presidency is public health. Every day I wake up and I think to myself, what fresh hell is this when I think about the Trump administration? But the health of our country, to your point, Nathan, like, I don't think people fully understand that vaccination, they work. They work. There is data, they work. And not only do they work, vaccinations also prevent like permanent damage. So if you don't like polio, like polio can make you like, you can be like paralyzed if you don't, have a vaccination, or like measles can affect your brain. Like vaccinations are so important. And I do agree that, if you don't want to take a vaccination, you shouldn't have to. But to Kevin's point, you do have to realize if you don't want to take the vaccination, you can't go and endanger other people's health. And that's the issue. Like, it's just, you can't, like Tarris, if you aren't vaccinated around certain things, it's not just you that you're impacted. I mean, unless you stay in your house all day, every day, and you don't go anywhere, then that's fine. But at the point where you're like, I don't want to take a vaccination, you shouldn't be able to come outside. Like, I really feel like that, like on certain things, because you're impacted, not totally, but I'm just saying you have to understand this is very selfish not to want to not only keep yourself healthy, and that's fine if that's what you want to do, but at the point you go to the grocery store and you decide I don't want to, be vaccinated, then you're putting other people's health in jeopardy as well.
I think it kind of operates along the same lines of we recognize as a society, right, at a certain point, like, hey, if you want to smoke, that's cool. If you want to, inhale tobacco into your lungs and take the risk of lung cancer and all of that sort of thing, that's cool. Do you? But you don't have the right to come into public accommodations and blow your secondhand smoke on other people who choose not to smoke. You don't have the right to do that, right? That's along the same lines of the social compact that we have with these vaccines. You have every right not to take it, but what you don't have the right to do is to potentially put other people at risk, at a health risk, because you're choosing not to do something. And that might mean that you are excluded from certain places where large general swaths of the public, congregate, right? That's a social contract. It goes back to what I was saying about the village when we were talking about in the first. There's a certain social contract that doesn't work if we don't agree to look out for our neighbor, right? To some degree, and to take responsibility for that. And that's where these vaccines fall in. Dre said something that I 100% agree with. If you don't want to take the vaccine, cool, but do it with some knowledge. I see way too many people out there who talking smack about vaccines who don't know jack. They ain't done no research. They ain't talked to their doctor. They ain't even been to the doctor. They don't even go to the doctor, right? It's like, that's what I have limited patience for. But if you've been in consultation with your doctor, you have some sort of religious philosophy, although I would like to know what that is, as to why you don't want to take vaccines. I'm cool with that. Do it with some knowledge, but don't just be one of them people out there that's just believing whack job stuff and doing it because you're scared or because of what somebody else told you. Last thing, I agree with Tamaya 100%. The Republicans can't have it both ways because their standard bearer has it both ways. Remember, Trump set this whole thing off from the beginning by saying COVID was a hoax, right? Remember, it wasn't real. It was a hoax. Everything that comes against him is a liberal hoax or attack, right? That's out of his playbook until he got sick. Now, you didn't see that man turning down the cocktails and the experimental drugs to save his life because he was on the ropes. COVID had him on the ropes. Okay, he's lucky, quite frankly, to be alive, because he was taking all that experimental stuff that a whole lot of his followers right now is saying, and RFK Jr. is saying, hey, you need to watch out. Boy, he sure didn't have a problem taking it when they was about ready to hook him up to a ventilator. So this is how this guy operates. He is a snake oil salesman. He will tell you it is a hoax, but then he'll take the medicine for himself and for his people. I don't know when people are going to wake up and see it.
They will not.
Go ahead.
No, you're right. I was going to say they will not. They will not, Kevin. Some of them will not wake up. Go ahead, Brother Dre.
Hey, I'm gonna give you guys a real life extreme example on decision making when it comes to your health. Okay, I was publicly about my wife experienced breast cancer. Okay, here you have a situation where chemotherapy or holistic, and you hear about this all the time in the process of the journey. Dealing with chemotherapy is poison. It's going to destroy you. It's going to kill you. When my wife and I made a conscious decision, educated system, looked at her overall health, we decided to go with the chemo. However, and it's interesting because they gave you what I call a death sheet. They literally say this can happen We don't know if this can happen. You will probably experience death, and you literally have to sign it now before the chemo starts. But one of the things we were educated on is that we also contacted a doctor that dealt with herbalistic medicines, who used to be in that area of the chemotherapy field. And he literally said, we need to work together to offset it when her immune system drops completely. So it wasn't just as if we just said, hey, doc, thanks, give me the chemo. No, we had to offset the poison with other alternatives to keep her immune system boost, because when it dropped too low, her white count was so low. If she would have went and got another dose, it would have killed her. And we told the doctors, no, we'll see you in a month after her white count goes higher. And that's what people don't monitor your health. You have to monitor your health to the fullest, regardless who's trying to put anything in you. That's why I will be an advocate to say, do your research, understand what's going to happen, get everything in play, because if you just do what somebody else tells you to do, yes, you can be dead instantly, or it can help you. So my whole process will always be on the education and what the whole piece of the pie looks like.
I can get with that.
Yeah. How's your wife doing now?
She's great, 100% in remission, and it's a beautiful thing. And she did have heart complications from taking radiation, and we had to stop the radiation because it was penetrating the heart cavity, and people don't really understand that part. And so when these things happen, you really do have to take the balance, because there were some things medically that occurred with her that the doctors were like, hey, we don't know what's going on, but remember that clause you signed that here's some underlining things that can happen. But fortunately, she by the grace of God, she pulled through, and we continue to stay on a regimen of immune boosting treatments.
Can you share, just since you brought it up, can you share one thing with the audience that maybe they don't know in terms of prevention or once you get a diagnosis?
Yeah, usually I tell, because now men are getting breast cancer at an alarming rate just as well. But so you obviously have to check for any type of lumps, and the mammograms that you get, sometimes they actually miss it. Believe it or not, during COVID, a lot of women were coming down with breast cancer because they were missing the mammograms and the tests and the ultrasounds. But when you going through that process, definitely get a support team of information. The doctors can be great, or the doctors can just be following a checkoff list. And if you don't talk to other people in that journey, I'm gonna tell you, it's one of the most difficult journeys for women to have to deal with, to have some stranger mark on your breast, tell you that they may need to cut them off. It's a very, very challenging period for women. So I always tell them to get a support cast of individuals that recognize that entire process.
The pastor at Crossroads Church, where I go, Brian Tome, has been pretty open about the fact that his wife has breast cancers, had a double mastectomy, and it's gone in the lymph nodes and all that. And I just respect the fact that he's, been pretty open about it and looked at it from a spiritual standpoint and so forth. So if any of you guys are interested, you could probably jump on the website and hear what he's got to say.
And what is that website again?
Crossroads.net.
Crossroads. Okay. Appreciate that. So I want to go back to something Kevin said, and I didn't share this with you, but it's not going to take you much to catch up with. It's a video from a content creator, because Kevin asked a question. He was like, I don't know what it's going to take with some people to realize what's going on. And I think what it's going to take is they're going to have to suffer the consequences of their own actions. So I came across this a few weeks ago, been meaning to share it with you guys, but I want to share it with you. It's a radical idea. I don't know how plausible it is, but I do believe that if we implemented this, that it would wake a whole lot of people up about some of these policies that they claim that they care about. So check this out. I'm gonna play it for you real quick, and then get your thoughts on the other side. There we go. Here we are. Check this out.
But for the next 4 years, that card is your life. You need healthcare? Present your card. Public transportation?
Hold on one second. Let me refresh it.
Residents, 2 systems. You vote red, you get a red card. You vote blue, you get a blue card. But for the next 4 years, that card is your life. You need healthcare? Present your card. Public transportation? Card. You go to a restaurant? Show the card. You're trying to file taxes or get disaster relief or apply for a job, even to get utilities. Yeah, you're going to need that card. Red card holders get the policies they voted for. No Medicaid expansion, no union protections, no student loan relief, no restaurants with immigrant employees or even food picked by immigrant hands, no federal disaster aid, unless of course the hurricane was Jesus approved, and absolutely no abortion access, even if your mistress needs one. And since we're talking about accountability, red card holders only get the benefits their states actually pay for. So no more blue state bailouts, no more taking in more federal money than you contribute. So if you're living off that $1,100 a month in blue benefits now, you better learn how to make that red $300 stretch. Roads, your problem. Bridges, good luck. Those inspections don't pay for themselves. Hospitals, shuttered. But hey, until the Wi-Fi gets cut off, you can still yell about socialism on Facebook. But blue card holders, you're going to get infrastructure, you're going to get safety nets, you're going to get the public schools that actually teach history. Red card holders can still ignore science, but blue card holders are going to get the freedom to follow it. And I promise you this, after one term, just one, you're going to see a flood of red cards turning blue. Because nothing exposes bad political ideology like being forced to live under it. No scapegoats, no whataboutisms, just the raw, unfiltered consequences of your vote. Okay, so wild idea. 2 presidents, 2 systems. You vote red, you get a red.
He's on to something.
Man, I love
He's
that
on to
one.
something. I
Oh,
love the idea
yes,
because
I do.
there's people that want to drag people down with them. It's not even about the policy. It's about the fact that they think the policy will hurt somebody else. But if you had to live with all this wacky stuff they're talking about, all this RFK, if you want to live in an RFK world, you go live in over there. I'm gonna stay over here with the blue card. I agree with him 100%. It would change over. It'll take a couple of months when it start impacting people. Like, oh my God, and they start looking at blue card holders like, oh my God, life's better over there. All of a sudden, they want to be socialists. All of a sudden, they think, being a liberal's not so bad. Well, what do you think?
I love that.
The 12th Amendment, I think it was the 12th Amendment or in 1804 when they started deciding that the vice president and the president wouldn't be the first and the second ballot getters. You know what I'm saying? So if the president, no matter what party you were from, and I think they should go back to that. No matter what party you were from, the first popular vote getter or electoral vote getter from which either party, so we'd have a president that's a Republican and a vice president that is a Democrat, and I see in the chat, enjoy my red card. I would enjoy my red card because I know that blue card I'd have to share everything. My hard work wouldn't go for me and my family. I'd have to share all my hard work with all these illegal immigrants and all these people who are in these sanctuary cities and stuff like that. So y'all have fun with that. I'll be over here watching y'all like, man, y'all need some arms. I got y'all.
Some of us don't mind sharing though, Tarris. Some people are selfish like you.
Hey, that's good. I will take that. I'll take that.
What do
You
you
know
think?
what that video reminded me of? Back when Obamacare was introduced and they were having all those town halls, people attacking it and how terrible it was. Do you remember the picture of the guy with the sign that said, "Get your government hands off my Medicare"? You guys remember that?
Right. I remember people not knowing that ADA and Obamacare were the same thing. Or ACA.
Yeah, I love it.
But again, I don't know how plausible it is, but that would open people's minds. They'd be like, wait a minute, this red card is certainly not as fun as making sure everybody else has to suffer just like me.
Nathan, especially around the money and minimum wage and how the blue states carry the red states. I mean, there's so much to unpack there around policy that people benefit from, the infrastructure and things that people are trying to cut. Like, it's interesting, I think, and your point about the Obamacare and Affordable Care Act, how so many people don't realize that they benefit from these things, or they voted in a way where they didn't care that these things happen, just not to people like that, not to them. And that's the crazy part about all of this. So I agree with that 1,000%. I know it's not plausible, but I really do wonder what would happen if people had to live under the policies they voted for.
We voted for them, and we voted for those policies. I'm sure that, like, just because I'm
Who
sure
is we?
I know who I voted for. I
was
voted
like,
for the
you didn't vote
policy.
for those.
No, look, hold on, Tamaya. Let me finish my statement. I'm sure you said you would hope those people would be happy. I would be happy knowing that I voted for who I voted for and receiving those policies from the red card. I would not want anything to do with I would look at you, and there's several people who think like me. This panel often becomes an echo chamber. This panel, the day before the election, believed that Ohio polls that Kamala Harris was going to be president. So that's why I stick to my guns on this. There's people who believe the same way that I do, just like there's people that believe the way you guys do. Y'all like, yeah, kumbaya, and like the blue card would be better because you're in amongst a bunch of blue card people. Myself, I would want the red card because I agree with those policies. And not saying that your ways are wrong, but I'm saying there's a different
people
way.
don't mess with you though, right? You know, most of the red card people don't mess with you, right? I mean, you know that, right?
That's your perspective.
I didn't know.
No, that's your perspective. That's your perspective too, Tarris, because you see how them red card people was treating you during the brawl. You went on your black man tirade rant. You was talking about the brawl, so you know how the red card people gonna treat you. You just try to pretend like it's not. And you know, like I said, you know, I love you, Tarris. I got mad respect for you as a man and as a person, but politically, you are confused because you are sleeping. You are sleeping with the enemy, bro. You are siding with people who are not for you or your people. And I just find it hard to see how you can be so pro-black and ready to knuckle up when we talking about some of these things, and then in the next breath, you going right along with the people who perpetrating that stuff. I don't like.
The Democratic Party uses the black people and your votes for nothing. It gives you nothing burgers and kept us in perspective since 1965. We have not gotten any better. We are at the bottom of the barrel. We're at the bottom at the barrel. In every socioeconomic demographic,
I'm not going to let you say that the Democratic Party has given black people a nothing burger. Now, what I would say is that the Democratic Party has not given black people a full return on their investment. I would agree with that. But to say that the Democratic Party has delivered a nothing burger is factually inaccurate because more has happened for black people under Democrats than under Republicans. And I know you're going to go back like a lot of your Republicans will do, and they'll say, well, yeah, we ended slavery. Okay, well, what have Republicans done since then? Okay, y'all, I give you that. Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation. Bravo. I appreciate it, bro.
Let me answer.
There's been how many years since that? How many years since the Emancipation Proclamation?
You said those white people during the brawl that they were giving me a hard time and they were giving the pushbacks. Those are the same white people that have to come and look me in the eyes and say, Tarris, you were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Those same white people are coming to me, won't have a conversation. Won't have a conversation when it comes to truth. And you know it. I'm not sitting up here saying one thing and backpedaling when I go be around white people. I say it. And I say it in their face. And when it comes back and all this truth has come back, every last one of these white people are like, oh, Tarris, I don't know, man. You're making me look at you different. They're all like, you were right. So it ain't like they need me in that, but I'm needed.
Well, Tarris, in fairness, I'm white. In fairness, I am white. I've never said you were right. You got to admit that.
You don't ever say nothing, Phil.
Oh,
I don't know, Tarris.
Oh my God, it's like a dagger in my heart.
But Tarris, not giving people more giving people less won't give you more. Like you get that red card. I don't know if you think that withholding stuff from other people, you're going to have more in your pocket because you're not. Like, I don't know what policies that you actually cite as the reason why you are, besides your rhetoric around the Democratic Party. And I agree with you, Kevin, about not getting the ROI from Democratic Party. But what policies do you specifically, what endears you to the Republican Party, or what endears you to to vote the way you do during the presidential election? Like, I want to know, like, because I don't know you. I literally don't know you from a can of paint. So I want to know some substance. Like, what does the Republican Party do that makes you like that tickles your fancy?
It's not so much what the Republican Party does that tickles my fancy. It's the lack of accountability that the Democratic Party has, and the lies. This specific election, the reason why I voted. Let me finish. The Republican Party, this specific election, presented a candidate, Donald Trump, that was better for my family than the Democratic Party of Kamala Harris. That was better for me and the better voting choice for me. I call out the Republicans. That's why I am a black Republican, because I call them out when they're in situations when they're not right. In the Democratic Party, there's too much hierarchy, and the black male in the Democratic Party is very last on the list, because it goes black women.
Huh?
When it comes to black men in power, and I'm not talking about globally. Let's break this down into the Democratic Party, how they use black men.
I'm gonna let you finish. Listen, what I'm saying. If I ask somebody what their preference is, you can't tell me. You have to be able to tell me your preference without telling me what you don't like. You didn't. You didn't tell me what policy that ingratiates you to the Republican Party without telling me about Democratic Party. Tell me why you vote the way you vote.
In the Republican Party, where I vote in my county, in my state, Republican Party moves the needle more than the Democratic Party does. In my state, in my county, in my constituency, the Republican Party I have the ear to them. They move policy that I like. The Democratic Party has an agenda that I don't agree with. I don't agree with a lot of their agenda. And that's why. It has nothing to do with color. It has everything to do with policy. The Democratic Party, I do not agree with a lot of things that they have. I'm pro-life. There's certain things that I don't agree with the Democratic Party. And I believe that way because I agree. And I agree. And I think that the Democratic Party has used black people over the course of my lifetime to not get us anywhere. So why would I align myself with that party when I see them doing that? And especially where I live in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I see them pushing forward more in the Republican Party than I do in the Democratic Party.
You're anti-choice. You're not pro-life, you're anti-choice. That's what I'm hearing. You're anti-choice. Because I'm pro-life too, but I'm pro-choice.
I am pro not having clinics and everything like that, primarily in the black community. I am pro educating the black community on reproduction, because if we're 13% of this country, why have we stayed 13% of this country? You're asking me why I don't like the Democratic Party? Because the Democratic Party puts death and pushes death since Margaret Sanger. Since Margaret Sanger has been pushing death on the black community, but we keep perpetuating it over and over and over. And the only time they come around is when they want our votes. Every time. The Republican Party, in my opinion, I line up with the policies on. I'm freedom of speech. I'm pro-gun 2A. Those are the policies that I line up with the Republican Party, and I'm pro deportation. I'm pro deporting illegal immigrants. I don't believe
Obama deported more people.
Okay, cool.
He's a Democrat.
That's not the narrative now. I don't believe that what's her name, Kamala Harris, is a black woman. I believe she's Indian and Jamaican from Irish. She's not a black. She did not experience with Tamaya.
Can I
chill now, man? I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about the Indian consulate coming after this podcast right
this
now.
Guy, I mean, I've never.
I went with you earlier when you said that deal, but when he just threw in the Kamala Harris thing, I'm like,
Kamala Harris ain't black.
Oh no,
for your
she asked me a question. She asked me a question.
To be clear, I never heard about it. I never heard of specific policy. I heard what you hate. I heard what you're against, but I never heard a policy that you were for that makes you endeared to the Republican Party.
Because I'm not that endeared to the Republican Party, because in situations when it comes down to like the Cincinnati brawl, I will leave the Republican Party and go independent in a minute. But when I see them start doing things that go against black people, it unremorseful,
every day they go to the
I see the Democratic Party doing that. I see the Democratic Party doing that. I see
Tarris, it must be so tough for you. It must be so tough for you to go into like a convenience store and deal with those, Indians and Pakistanis. I mean,
I deal with them every day. I say, what's up, Benga? What's happening? And they say, what's up, my brother? What's up, my brother? What you need to get something, my brother? Come on. You guys are living in a false reality world where you guys can't be real with yourselves. If you guys on here and y'all can't go into an Indian store and have fun and joke with the Indian store owner and him joke back with you. I don't understand this. I don't understand why
So
y'all
let me. Can I save you, Tarris? Let me save my boy Tarris.
He needs somebody to save him.
Yeah, let me step in. So, Tamaya, you sent me a message. You were concerned about my perceived change in politics. So let me and I don't know what your question might be, but Democrat, Republican, whatever, you want to run for public office, I support you in that endeavor. Whether it's city council or the first congressional district or any congressional district. I mean, if you want to run. It doesn't mean that I'm going to support you, but I support everybody's, desire to get out there and run. And I wholeheartedly believe that we need Black people and people of color to be in the Republican Party. We need that influence. We need that connection. We need that line of communication. It don't mean that I agree with your policies.
Not if they don't know who they are. That they might.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Who determines on who knows who somebody is except that certain person? Just because you might not, just because somebody might look at somebody and say, "Oh, you're confused. You're confused." You're confused.
About you,
look at. I'm not saying. I'm not. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about Secretary Turner, the HUD director. The HUD director. You guys would look at him like, how do you guys can see him? He's a Republican. He's a part of a change is about to happen in the United States of America that is coming fast. And he's a Black man and he's a Republican. How does he not have the best interest of the entire country in place? But the policies that he's about to move to getting people off of HUD and getting people back to work. That's the kind of stance that I'm on. Republicans like him.
Yeah, I don't. What I hear coming from HUD right now, I think is going to be ultimately destructive for America and primarily Black people. So to answer your question, that's why I support people's desire to run, and then I support having a conversation with you, and I can determine whether I believe or support your policies once you open your mouth or I see what it is you're trying to do. Does that answer your question or?
It does, because I didn't know to what extent. Like you just being supportive of people who want to run for office is one thing, but support is another. So I appreciate you actual supporting a candidacy. And I was worried for a second. I didn't know what was happening, but I understand that the different lines of support.
If you want to run. And I'll say it again. We need intelligent, critically thinking Black people to be a part of the Republican Party. We cannot abandon this party. I don't think that ultimately that's a smart strategy at all. But we also need a certain type of person with a certain mentality to be a part of the party.
Yeah, you gotta have principles, okay? Like this is the main thing. Like we don't need Black Republicans who are just looking to establish themselves, make a buck, ascend to whatever political aspirations they have when they don't really have the people or the community in mind, right? That you're standing on principles. What I see too often from Black Republicans is they compromise their position because you have to. I hate to say that, but you have to compromise your principles in that party because the party in general is not interested in the things that Black people primarily are concerned with in this country. They see it as wokeism. I mean, you just listen to the way that the party frames and talks about issues. They're eliminating DEI. They brought into this notion, despite all of the numbers and statistics that say to the contrary, the gaps that exist racially in this country, they want you to believe that we live on a equal footing, equal playing field where everything is fair and people are magically colorblind. That ignores the facts. And when you're in a party that says, unless you bend to our ideology, you're going to become irrelevant. If you have any aspirations of doing that, you got to become a Tim Scott. You got to become like this brother from North Carolina and these other places. And so I don't disagree with Nathan that we need more Black people in the Republican Party, but it's going to take a critical mass along the lines of what you saw. And there's just not enough of us to make that transition. It would take a critical mass, kind of like what you had with MAGA, that could essentially force the party. Like that's what MAGA did. They came in and they took over, and because there was a number of them that forced the party to listen to them and literally change their platform and agenda. You ain't got enough Black people to do that for the Republican Party. I mean, you would literally need to take every Black person who's a Democrat, lift them up, or pull some Black people who are currently not engaged in the process, kind of similarly to what MAGA did, and get them involved. Otherwise, where the Republican Party stands today, I'm with Tamaya. I would love for Tarris to tell me some policies that the Republicans have that deal with legitimate concerns that Black people have, policy concerns that they have about the way this country is being run and the way that things are done. Because everything I see the Republicans doing right now are setting back gains that Black people have made.
If that's your opinion, because it's not.
That's not my. That's a fact. That's a fact.
Okay, a fact. Since the civil rights movement, how much further? You want to know a policy I like? I like the HUD policy that they're about to implement, to where you can't stay on HUDs for generations. You have to work your way off a HUD. You want to know a policy? That's a Republican policy that I think that's going to help all Black people, getting people off of welfare and getting people back to work. That's a policy.
So where's the Republican policy for livable wages then? I'm with you on that. Let's get people off welfare. Let's get them off HUD. Let's get them into jobs that pay a livable wage. But you can't talk to Republicans about raising the minimum wage because they don't want to do that. They don't want to raise. So if you're going to ask somebody to move off of government assistance, if they're on government assistance to begin with, that means it's not just simply a fact that they don't have a job, because believe it or not, there are a lot of people who use government assistance because they don't make enough in the job that they do have. And the government assistance helps to supplement that. Okay. So that is a societal problem that says, hey, we need to raise the standard of living, the wages, so that people actually don't need a supplement of government assistance. Or, hey, let's create more affordable housing. But you know where Republicans always go? This is always the answer. The business community will say, well, no, we can't raise the minimum wage, because if we do that, then we're going to have to raise prices and pass it on to the consumer. And that's always the excuse. Somebody said it in the chat last time. We don't want to raise wages because they'll just pass on the prices to the consumer. Well, then how do people make more money then, Tarris? How if you're not going to raise the livable wage and costs and prices keep going up, how do people live if you're not going to subsidize it with the government? You're not going to raise their wages.
I'll answer your question about, because Black people, we're not all monolithic. We're not a monolith. So,
but that don't answer my question. Saying we're not a monolith doesn't give me a specific answer.
The answer to the question is, we were moving that way. We moved the needle more to the Republican Party more this election than we have in any other election. We voted not in the Republican Party since Barack Obama. Donald Trump got more of the Black male vote specifically than and we were moving the needle that way. I don't know where it's going right now, but I know that you guys are giving me a hard Republican Party and about being a Black Republican, but it's a far better viewpoint and vantage point from anything that I see from the Democratic side and have seen from the Democratic side since Joe Biden.
And that's why you need that red card. Because if you had to deal with the policies that you espouse and you saw everybody else dealing with those other policies, you would change your tune in an instant.
I don't think that there would be any tune changing at all. You get what you voted for. I would be happy with my red card, and you guys would be I would be happy with the red card and the person who I voted for, as I am still to this day, and you guys will be happy with your policies and what you guys do. That's fair. I'm not in the echo chamber that you guys are in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So
I
love that idea.
Didn't answer my question though. I asked.
No, he didn't.
Policy question.
You know
why Tarris doesn't have an answer? Because his party don't have an answer.
For the livable wage. You asked me something about Black people. I'm not going to talk about a livable wage for all the United States of America, because the most people who are.
Did you grow up on public assistance?
I didn't grow up on.
Grew up on public assistance.
Well, in effect, we all did on some level.
I'm talking about welfare.
Nathan, that in the Black community, that did not matter. In the Black community in the 70s and the 80s, that did not matter, because if you got food
did not matter in what way?
In the village that we grew up in the Black community, if you got food stamps, my family was buying food stamps to give you cash money for half of those food stamps, and it went through in all the communities. So let's not play that. Let's not play that. You're trying to play the victim card. Oh,
No,
woe is me.
I'm trying to
Woe
tell
is
you.
me. I grew up on public assistance. You grew up on public
No,
assistance,
Kev,
but
no,
my
Tarris,
parents gave
let me
money.
tell you what I'm trying to tell you. I'm just trying to, and I was interested in knowing who had actual experience on welfare, because you're talking about the mentality and what people in that group actually feel and believe. But I grew up with it, so I can tell you from experience, not secondhand, not filtered through YouTube. I'm telling you what I lived, what my family lived, and Kevin is absolutely right. You can't kick people off of public assistance without talking about a livable wage so they can actually afford to be off of public assistance. Quite frankly, we don't put enough into it. Public assistance just keeps you just barely getting by, but
The
it doesn't
same
help you. It doesn't help you get up and rise up. And that's
in
the
the,
way the system works.
in the same way, Nathan, where a lot of these folks are anti-choice, but they don't provide. They're anti education for like vouchers for like childcare. They're shutting down. They're making it hard for childcare to function because of minimum wage. A lot of childcare workers or people at these childcares, they make very little money. And so it's like you can't, it goes back to like having it both ways. I want to make you have this baby, but I don't want to pass legislation to help you support, having a child. So it's just it's a continuum of this wanting to have it all type of mentality. I'm not saying, and I'm with Nathan, there's nothing wrong with not growing up on assistance, or but you can't speak to that experience unless you had it. And you can't speculate. What you're talking about is hearsay, not something that you've actually gone through.
Yeah. Like I know what it's like for my mother to go into her pocket to peel out a book of food stamps and give them to me to go to the store, and I have to walk around all my friends and buy food with it. You don't. That's different. I know what it's like to not have enough to use Section 8 to move out to the suburbs, but not have enough money to cut the grass. So we got to cut the grass with knives by hand. So people can talk about that, but I have actually lived it, and that's what makes me good at what I do, because I have empathy for people who grow up from the bottom, so to speak. Because that's where I'm
from. Nathan, here's the problem that I have with politics, particularly Republican politics. Okay, is exactly what you talked about. And I've said this numerous times on this podcast, that the best policy is about people, not ideology. And you come up with good policy by talking to people and their lived experiences, not creating caricatures like Reagan did with the welfare queens, right? And that is what gets pumped out and pushed through the media, is that you got a whole bunch of people who are shiftless and who are not working, who are taking advantage of the system, living off of it. And what we have a tendency to do is, let's face it, the reality is that there are some people, we all know of somebody who is juicing the system, who's beating the system, right? But that doesn't mean that that's the majority of people, because the reality is that the majority of people who are on public assistance are the people that that are like your family, Nathan, who are experiencing things the way that you say it. Like that's the people who really need it, who are trying their best. But society, the workforce, the economy is not creating a system for them to be able to get over the hump. Moving from just getting by to being able to accumulate wealth is a huge gap that's not as easy to gulf as people who are well off. And look, most of us on here probably do okay. Okay, we probably doing okay for the most part. But our experience is wildly divergent from a lot of other people.
Can I say something about the Republican Party, of which I'm a member? The problem with the Republican Party today isn't ideology. The problem is cowardice. And if you want to see a prime example of that, I believe you showed a clip earlier, Nathan. Wasn't it Senator Bill Cassidy, who is a doctor, who was grilling, RFK like he's really a tough fact finder? Well, guess what? He knew everything about RFK, but he didn't have the guts to vote against him. He voted for him, and
he was the deciding vote.
He was the deciding vote. If he had gone against Ken, he would be out. But this guy is too scared of Trump attacking him and having a primary opponent, so he sells his principles. And he's a doctor. He knew very well. There's no excuse for him. He knew, but he sold his principles down the river. And again, I am a Republican. That is the problem with the Republican Party today. There are just too many cowards.
It's also all about the narrative, because there's not a bigger beneficiary than the government than corporate America. And that's the issue. We're talking about juicing the system, the tax breaks, the low wages. Nobody juices the system more than corporate America. But our narrative and our proximity to one another makes us seem like, or makes us feel like, Black people are the ones who are juicing the system, and Black people are the ones that got to pull up their bootstraps. We've never asked white people to do so. They've never had to do so. And if they have, it's because they messed up their privilege. So I just feel like the narrative has to be shifted around who benefits from the government, and what we're willing to call out. Because the fact that Trump doesn't pay the same amount of taxes as you and I do, and why are you shaking your head, Tarris? It's like, that's a problem. You don't that's okay with you?
Yes.
So here's Tamaya. Go ahead. Finish your point.
No,
finish your point.
No, I just find it troubling, and that tells me everything. Like, as I'm trying to understand you, the fact that every other word on this today was kicking out illegal immigrants, and your term, because not my term, because I hate that term, but that would, and I'm going to kick them out, and me and my family going to do this. But you're okay with this man not paying his fair share of taxes. Tells me everything I need to know about why you are Republican, even though you never gave me a policy. It's a little bit of self-hate going on right now. I don't care what you say. Like, there's some self-hate happening right now.
Here, Tamaya, the only thing I agree with a lot of what you said. The only thing that I would challenge a little bit is I think there are a lot of poor and struggling white people who, it's not necessarily because they messed up their privilege. It's because they are victims of the same elitist society that's exactly like what you said. People in business and people who do well, they call them entitlements, right? But the people who really feel entitled to that are those folks. They resent the fact and push on other people the fact that poor Black people and poor white people who need assistance, right? They're the problem. And they feel like they're entitled, because what you always hear is like, well, give these people tax breaks because they're job creators. But they need it the least of all. Like, they got the money to do everything that they need to do. But somehow, because they're job creators, this, that, and the other, they deserve extra, right? Like that is what they play off of. And they play off of what we are contributing. This is the mentality, right? I'm not saying that this is correct. I'm saying this is how they think. Well, we're contributing to the society. And so therefore, even though we have the most, we deserve more because we're contributing. And those folks down there who are drags on society, right? They don't deserve anything, right? We who already have more than enough deserve all of that. And that's the fallacy of the mentality that we have, and how we have a disdain for poor Black people and for poor white people. The difference is, though, they've made us the face of that poverty, of that quote unquote perceived shiftlessness, even though there are way more white people, right? There are way more white people who are struggling and poor than there are Black people. And how they get them is they convince them, like Lyndon Johnson said, if you can convince even the poorest white person that they're better than a Black person, you can empty their pockets. And this is what the Republicans excel at. Poor white folks should be on the side of minorities in this country, but they're not, because they get lured into this racism that allows them to blame Black people, immigrants, and other people for their hardships in life than the ones who are really responsible, which is that entitled elite class that continues to milk their pockets by selling them Bibles, prayer cloths, Trump watches and cologne, all that stuff that the president is pushing. Ain't nobody buying that but them poor MAGA folks that he's exploiting, right? The rich people ain't buying them cheap Trump watches and golf clubs and all. They ain't spending their money on that.
Some of them are.
The poor people are. And that is the game they run.
I'm glad you said what you said, but here's what I gotta say, and we gotta have this conversation about black people, because it's not just black people do it to black people. I take it back to the conversation that we had about North College Hill. There's a classism going on between inside the black community, where black folks who are a little higher up look down on black folks who are a little further down. And I feel like this whole thing about blame the parents, I think if you follow the root of it, is probably socioeconomics that is driving a lot of what we see. But you got a lot of black people, I would call them elitist or a little bit higher class, and they look down and criticize lower class or less wealthy black people. So as much as we can make that observation about others, we got to do it at home as well. People talking about unity, but there is a stratification when it comes to socioeconomics inside the black community in this city.
There's some truth to that, Nathan. I've
Oh, it's
always
all
said,
truth to it.
I've always said that. Now, I agree and disagree with you. One thing that I would say is that poverty is not a determinant of standards and so forth and so on, because there are a lot of poor people who have high standards. They have accountability. They know where their kids are. They're doing all of that. So I'm not going to say that poverty absolves you of those sorts of things, because there are plenty of people who struggle to still make sure their kids do the right thing. Okay, so the two are not necessarily there.
No one ever argued against that.
But I would
That's
agree
not
with
even the
you.
point.
But I would agree with you in the standpoint of that. I often say that there are levels of oppressors, right? So we always talk about oppressors as sort of quote unquote being the white man, but we've known throughout history that the oppressors have always used lesser oppressors, the middlemen, to the gatekeepers, you might call them, to keep the other people in check. So it was always the house slave who thought himself better than the field slave because he was in the big house and he was treated better. And there's that sort of thing. So I think the classism that you talk about has become sort of that house Negro mentality that you talk about, because
that's part of it.
There are some
is that we stop people who have risen a bit, they stop seeing themselves in those who have not. And I see that conversation when we talk about black children. When we had this conversation about North College Hill, the parents, man, nobody's more responsible for their children than the parents of those children. Nobody. But we act
but
like
I do think
the
some of that
parents
is
are not
based
there.
in some of that may be based in personal experience. You know, like that's where I come from. Like a lot of times when I talk about this issue, I speak on it from personal experience, because I came from a family where my parents, they held it down, man. They set standards. They set the tone for how me and my brothers came up. And I believe wholeheartedly that me and my brothers, who are all, I like to think, pretty productive individuals, are that because we had parents who didn't play, who held it down, who did that. So when I talk about parental responsibility, it comes from.
But it's unfair though. Because
It may be.
Your parents didn't experience what today's parents experience. Your parents, that was before the drug war.
That's
that was
true,
before all this stuff.
But you can
So
say that's
gotta
true
be
for
a
every
factor
generation.
when we're talking about our own. I just feel like we should have more grace and understanding and less finger pointing is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
Dre,
grace and mercy doesn't mean that you spare the criticism or that you spare the rod. I can have grace and mercy for you, but still tell you that you need to get your stuff together. The two are not mutually.
Well, we have to apply it to everybody, Kevin. Like I said, when we come to North College Hill, we can apply all that, accountability when it comes to the parents and the children. But as I said, I'm wondering what's happening inside the school building. That goes for the teachers and administrators too. So if we're going to be critical, let's be critical of everybody and not just cherry pick the people that we think didn't grow up the way we did and they didn't do it the way our parents did. I think it's wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to say something quickly, is that obviously a lot of information coming across the table. But one thing from a police mindset, you get rid of welfare, you're going to have a mass incarceration across the board. People will do what is necessary to survive. And 6 figures today isn't 6 figures anymore. I mean, I know people on 6-figure salaries and they didn't go above their budget or what have you, and they're still trying to make ends meet. And if you put an additional 3 mouths to feed on top of that, then they are already struggling within that process. So now you're talking about individuals who can't get jobs. So all of a sudden they're going to say, here's minimum wage. You can make $20 an hour, and $20 an hour isn't anything today. And so how do you expect people to survive and people to move and people to flourish? What they're going to do is crime is going to increase, and then they're going to set people up for mass incarceration and deal it with that system. So people need to be very, very careful how they go for the okie doke, because I'm telling you, for every action, there's a reaction. And this is going to set people up, because at the end of the day, the Black families are mostly single family homes. So if you take away the assistance, you're going to go into a whole nother level, because mostly white people have two parents homes. And that's just a fact. So you have to make sure you at least have a 2-partner income within this system. But I'm going to be first to tell you, you take away the assistance, there's going to be mass incarceration, there's going to be more crime, and you're going to have more police involved.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because there's another dynamic of that assistance that also doesn't get talked about enough, but I think is also a big part of what we've seen about some of the disintegration of what you said, 2-parent Black households, because in a lot of cases, to get that assistance, you can't have a man, for the females, you can't have a male in the household, right? And so that promotes separate households in the case where you have a woman and a man who have a child together. So you're essentially saying, the government is essentially saying that even though you need this money, this man can't be in the house if you want it. So that has had a disruptive aspect in terms of the situation of the fact that you have more Black people proportionally in poverty, and this breakup of the Black family because, hey, I need those funds and my man can't be here. So it's more than just kind of a cultural thing. You got to look at that systemic situation that creates. And then again, going back to the corporate greed thing, to Dre's point, people have to be able to make a livable wage. Now, I'm not talking about the small businesses, okay? Don't think I'm talking about the small mom and pop businesses who are trying to survive, the restaurants, the whatever. I get that they are sort of trapped in a certain space because those businesses don't generate the kind of money that I'm talking about corporate America jobs create. As a small business owner myself, I understand you only got so much capital to work with. And even if you want to pay people more in your heart, you only got so much money that you can work with.
Guys,
corporate America, that's not, look, the profit margins that a lot of these corporations are working with are built in greed. These hedge fund managers and all of these other people who come in and cut jobs, who take over corporations and cut jobs for no other reason than for them to maximize their profits, has destroyed the American workforce. And people
guys,
don't want to talk about that.
I got to jump off. Could I just say one thing before I do? I enjoyed the show today. We didn't get to talk about this, but Nathan sent a clip which just blew my mind, of all these tech billionaires having dinner with the president. And they are, this is everybody. This is Bill Gates. This is whatever, the Altman. This is all of them. And they are basically trying to outdo each other, going around the table and praising Trump. I mean, I have to say this. I give them credit. This was the greatest example of ass kissing I've ever seen in my life. Okay? And, these are guys who will never, ever want for anything. And yet it's almost like they just can't get enough. And when I've listened to interviews with these guys, their attitude seems to be that what's good for Silicon Valley is good for America. Mm-hmm. And I do this, my own little podcast I call Sanity Check, if you ever want to check it out. And I just recorded one. And what I talked about was, in the Nazi era, how most of the big companies collaborated with Hitler. I mean, there's one company, I think it's called Hugo Boss. I think they're big. Don't they do luxury clothes? They made all the uniforms. Okay, and then Volkswagen, I didn't realize, was actually created by the Nazis, and all these companies, most of them used slave labor. Okay, that the government gave them to make their stuff. And I kind of asked the question, and in fairness, do you know Hitler probably made the greatest economic miracle in history in 3 years, turned that massive unemployment to employment, huge projects. I mean, in fairness, 5 million people unemployed and nobody unemployed. But I asked the question, is what was good for that economy, was that good for the country? And I think that's a good question we need to ask ourselves, because these tech billionaires are basically kind of giving the impression that, oh, what's good for us is good for the U.S. And that isn't necessarily the case.
I want to say just quickly, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate being here. One thing that we didn't talk about is the cliff effect and how it de-incentivizes people to work, because they make a certain amount, they lose their child care benefits. So we didn't get a chance to talk about that as it relates to public assistance. And also, I know it's going to be controversial, Kevin, based on what you said, but I feel like even if you're a small business, if your business is predicated on paying people low wages, then that's a problem. All right. That's all. Thank you.
In closing, too, I want to say,
No,
Tamaya, I want to say thank you, Tamaya, for coming on, because that's it's a brush of front there, Brother Dre. Good to see you back on here again.
Thank you, Tarris.
And just for people who might be watching, I say whatever I want, whenever I want, how I want to say it. I've earned that right to do so. And I appreciate this platform for being able to come on here and do that. And Nathan and Kevin will tell you I stand on everything that I say. And I always say it, and I'll say at the end, let my fruits and my works be my actions. I might fly off the handle on this podcast and I might say whatever. But if you look at my fruit and you look at my works and you look at my actions, it's impeccable and unmatched. So I appreciate you guys being on the show, and I appreciate you guys getting to go back and forth with each other. But it's all love and it's all for blackness, all for black men. I'm a pro-black heterosexual man, so that's where I stand.
And I am a gay black woman. Yes,
and I love you for it, and I love you.
Thank you, Tarris. I appreciate you.
With that, guys,
Tarris, and that's why we say it's never personal, bro. And that's why I always try. That's why I tried to say, I respect you as a man and what you do, but we can disagree with each other's political thoughts, right? And that's really what it's about. It's not about trying to make any judgment on you or anything like that and what you do, because you're right. Like I see what you're doing. I see what you're out there doing. And I mean, we all have different thoughts and perspectives, and they're not 100% right all the time, but they are our thoughts, and a lot of times they're based on our experiences and what we see and what we know. And I think the diversity of thought, hopefully this conversation, when the audience hears all of us speak, that they pull from each of us something that makes sense, that broadens their mind, makes them think a little bit, right? A little bit more than they did before. Because that's what happens for me. I mean, I might not agree with everything that's said, but I always leave thinking about something that somebody said.
With that, Brother Dre, any last words? I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Oh, just once again, just appreciate the love, just coming back. Been enjoying my retirement, but just looking forward to working with everyone for what's to come within this city. And I've said it before, we do have to stick together, unify, even in our differences, work together, because there is an explosion coming and we have to be prepared for what is to come, because Kevin already knows the Bible is divide and is conquer. And Satan is the master of this game. He knows how to play it. He knows how to get into our emotions. But if we put our minds together and still push to the same direction, I'm telling you, we could move mountains in this city.
I love it. With that, to the audience, thank you for being here. Somebody said best pod in the city. Oh boy, I love hearing that. Thank you so much. That means we're on the right direction. And Tamaya, I appreciate you. I will be reaching out to see whenever you're available. It's an open door policy. Love the flows.
Anytime you call me.
Come back.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. To the panel, Phil had to roll out, but Tamaya, Brother Dre, Tarris, Kevin, to the audience, appreciate you. Have a great weekend. Any predictions on the Bengals? Because I mean, I was listening to Lincoln Ware. He said this first game is a must win. I agree with him. It is a must win.
Yeah, it's a must win for my mental health. I mean, I'm gonna just put it out there because I'm actually gonna go up to Cleveland for the game. My wife surprised me with some tickets for my birthday, so we're gonna head up. And I'm telling you right now, I might need some serious counseling, Nathan. So you might have to take it easy on Tuesday, man, because if they lose, I might be in a different headspace for the on Tuesday. I'm just putting y'all on notice right now.
We don't have any more.
Ain't no telling what I might come with on Tuesday if these boys lose on Sunday.
We don't have any more slow starts in us. We got to come out the gate. Like we can't go 0-4 and all that other crazy mess.
I got confidence in the Bengals. I'm predicting a big win. And if they lose, I'm predicting a big win next week then. So I'm gonna stay positive. But thank you for being here, everybody. Have a great Friday, and we will talk with you on Tuesday.